The Master Doctor here today, also an eminent Dr. Amitav Banerjee. Sir is a distinguished public health expert and academician, currently serving as Professor Emeritus in the Department of Community Medicine at Dr. D.Y. Patil Medical College, Pune. With decades of experience in epidemiology, preventive medicine, and medical education, he has made significant contributions to public health research, policy, and training in India, and his leadership in the field continues to inspire generations of medical professionals and public health practitioners. So, I welcome you, sir, today. And once again, I welcome all of you at today's lecture for the topic Substance Use Disorders. So, before going into the session, let me take you through the brief of today's topic. So, substance use disorders are chronic, relapsing conditions characterized by the compulsive use of psychoactive substances despite harmful consequences. They involve altered brain function, affecting reward, motivation, and behavior control. And common substances include alcohol, opioids, stimulants, cannabis, and sedatives. So, diagnosis is based on criteria such as tolerance, withdrawal, and impaired control. And SUDs are associated with significant physical and psychological and social consequences, including increased risk of infectious diseases, mental health disorders, and mortality. So, management includes behavioral therapies, psychosocial support, and pharmacological interventions, emphasizing long term individualized and multidisciplinary approaches for sustained recovery. So, without any further delay, I would now like to hand over the session to you, sir. Kindly proceed with your talk and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kassis, and it's always a pleasure to come on Clirnet platform. And good evening to all the viewers. Today we are having a very important discussion on substance use disorders. As you know, this is a emerging problem, and there are certain crises like the opiate crisis, which is assuming alarming proportions and a major public health problem and a social problem besides a mental public health problem. So this would be the scope of the session, the case definition, the changing concepts. We have the case definition based on the DSM, that is Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. And the first edition was in 1950. That had classified alcoholism and drug addiction were grouped under sociopathic pathological personality disorders. It was considered a personality disorders. Then in 1968, there was a revision in DSM-2 that it was episodic excessive drinking, habitual alcohol addiction, and subcategories were specific drugs, withdrawal, and tolerance. So the main stress was on alcoholism, actually. That then subsequently in 1970, DSM-3 concept of abuse and dependence alcoholism term eliminated. So it included all substances which could be abused, misused. And it had a own section, and it was delinked from personality disorders. So this was the important change. And now we will then in today's discussion we will be defining the case according to DSM-5. Then we will give the latest DSM-5 update. Then diagnostic criteria according to DSM-5. Then we'll be discussing etiology and epidemiology of substance use disorders. And as I said, we will be specifically focusing on the opioid crisis. And it has got a very fascinating and very long history with the Oriental roots. So I will just briefly trace that. And management options, prevention and control, and why it is difficult. We will just give an overview. So according to DSM-5, substance use disorders has been defined as a problematic pattern. The word is problematic pattern of use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress manifested by at least two of the following. We will be showing what are the following criteria occurring within a 12-month period. So these are the criteria. That is the impaired control, that is using larger for longer time than intended. One loses the self-regulation. One overshoots the mark using larger amounts, no control over once ingestion of the substance, persistent desire or unsuccessful attempts to cut down or control use, great deal of time obtaining, using, or recovering. The world of that person revolves around that substance or that drug, craving or strong desire or urge to use, uncontrollable or impaired control. Other indicator is the social, it affects the social functioning, fails to fulfill major roles, work, school, home. There is domestic violence, there is sickness, absenteeism, there are fights, interpersonal relations, persistent social or interpersonal by substance use, and social, occupational, recreational activities given up or reduced. So this is the person cannot function his or her social role. Then risk to others, use in physically hazardous situations like drunken driving, using machinery, or in working in occupations which are having hazardous, harm to others, harm to self, and use despite physical or psychological problems caused by use. And what are the pharmacological criteria to label a person addicted? Tolerance as defined by either of the following, like the liver metabolizes faster, there are enzymatic changes, so need to use an increased amount of a substance in order to achieve the desired effect, or markedly diminished effect with continued use of the same amount of the substance. I mean, that person doesn't get the intoxication or the feel high or the euphoria, and the person requires more and more. Withdrawal, other is the withdrawal. So that indicates these two criteria, that is pharmacology, two criteria, the tolerance and the withdrawal. Withdrawal means either of the following: the characteristic withdrawal syndrome of the substance. The substance is taken to relieve or avoid withdrawal symptoms. As long as the person is getting the substance to which substance is dependent, addicted, he or she appears normal. I remember when I was in college, my pharmacology professor used to say that as long as the any addiction, morphine or opium or any other strong, as long as the person gets regular supply, the person is not, he does not appear abnormal to his even close friends. The moment he doesn't get, he or she doesn't get, there may be severe withdrawals, there may be palpitation, there will be sweating, there may be diarrhea, constipation, there may be convulsions. I personally have an experience of a close friend whom I knew for many years, very sober, very intelligent, and nobody could suspect in our group. And then he met with a traffic accident and he was hospitalized. In hospital, he threw a convulsion because he was not getting the drug, and he was identified during the withdrawal symptom. So it may be very difficult to diagnose a person who is getting, and fortunately he could get weaned off his addiction, he could be cured. He was, and but he wasn't detected until unless this episode of withdrawal. So these are the, now as per the DSM-5, there have been more than 100 substances have been labeled as potential for misuse or substance use disorders. So alcohol, then there are the regular ones like caffeine and other things, which is very common and very socially acceptable, caffeine. But of course, very high doses can cause arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, insomnia. But they are, then of course, tobacco is a major issue which causes a lot of health problems. Alcohol too. Then cannabis is, most parts of a country, or in some parts of a country or some occasions, it is accepted as a culturally accepted. So these are different cultural aspects to the substance abuse. But once it gets, it affects the social life, it affects the occupational life, it hazard, then it is labeled as a disorder. Then hallucination, PCP, others, inhalants. Some people use sniffing and inhalants or inhaling heroin. Gambling has also been included as a substance abuse in the DSM-5. That's also compulsive behavior. That also gives a person becomes a social isolated because he's gambling all the time. There may be it's almost an addiction. Gambling is also included, and then of course the opioids, as I said, we will be dealing with the opioids crisis in some detail. Then sedatives, sleeping pills, anything which works on the brain or CNS has got addiction potential. Anxiolytics, stimulants like amphetamine like substances, amphetamine and like substances. Students use it a lot to keep awake at night. Then tobacco, this is again in the class of, and tobacco is a major issue, and there may be many others. Some young people, they sniff the glue or varnish or anything to get the spirit, methanol. So these are number of things, paints. Then what is the, we'll be discussing about the overall substance abuse disorder epidemiology in India, because this has got a very country to country, depending on culture, availability, this differs. And it's very difficult to catch the real public health burden because it is associated with lot of stigma, lot of secretive, and people do not come out. And as I said, as long as the people may be appearing totally normal, if he or she is getting regular supply, and nobody will admit in a survey easily until unless that he or she is addicted to drugs, or there is a denial also. So we always underestimate, and but some surveys have been done in India in 2019 by Department of Social Welfare or something. So patterns of substance use change over time, and it is also the culture changes over time, the social changes over time. So, like in the earlier times, we had cannabis, bhang, or other things, or some local toddy and other things. Now, with the westernization, Western influence, we are young, particularly the urban youth, are going for opioid or going for other which are used in the Western countries. So with changes in Indian culture, substance use patterns are also changing, and scarcity of data was a problem, and even now it's a problem. But some data is available of nationwide surveys have been conducted. Ministry of Social Welfare, I think, will give you the reference in the end. So these are, I have taken, there are a number of surveys. The latest I have taken 2019. And there are other surveys, NFHS 4, National Family Health Service 5, 4, and all that. But just to keep it simple, and just at least a thumb ball pen estimate. So tobacco is current tobacco users are about 30%. This is about 45 years. And among the tobacco use in our country, the smokeless tobacco use is also coming up. We had done a study a few years back. We found as the public places and all, smoking is not allowed. And in schools, colleges, hospitals, even clubs and restaurants. So many people in India are switching over to smokeless, so which is difficult to identify. So smoking is 12% and smokeless tobacco consumption is higher. Here also this recent survey 2019, recent almost 5-6 years old. So current smokeless tobacco is higher than the smoking in India. So we also had identified it. Alcohol use is overall, it is above 15 years here, data. More than 18% in men above 15 years, and women 1.3%. I think this is an underestimation, particularly overall India, it may be 1.3%. But nowadays, the urban women, particularly right from big cities or urban centers, even from college or occupations, many women are equally using alcohol. It's a sort of like women smoking had increased. So there may be difference, urban rural difference, but then heavy episodic drinking has been reported in 3 national surveys. Baker 2019 reported that among the current users, almost 43% consume more than 4 drinks on a single occasion. So you can see there are 18% men, maybe some appreciable number of women are also using alcohol, and 43% are taking heavy drinking out of the uh, those who use alcohol. So this is a concern. Then, of course, as I said, cannabis and all is 2.8% and bhang 2%, other illicit 1.2%. So there are certain, it is our culturally, cannabis is with us for quite long time. Some states they are used more in certain occasions like Holi or something. The movies also so sometimes bhang vagera ka, there is a song also. Opioids, this is the crisis which is fast. America is facing a major crisis, and India perhaps is looking the opioid crisis in the face. There have been certain changes in India I'll be discussing. Heroin use is 1.14%. Pharmaceuticals, opioids is a major problem in the West because prescription drug, it has been, recent crisis has been driven by prescription drugs, by high pressure marketing by pharma companies. We'll come to that. Opium use is 0.52%. Prevalence of harmful opioid use is 0.70. Prevalence of opioid, these are all underestimate. I think we can make out. This is actually Indian figures. Dependence on heroin 50%, dependence on opium user 20%. Depend heroin users, those who get exposed to these drugs, they get hooked on it. 50% get hooked on it. 20% opium users and 50% heroin users. And I think this is under, particularly in urban centers, metropolises, this is an underestimation, very difficult. People, because it's a crime, you get caught, you will be arrested. So people will not admit use, people will not admit possession. And if you open the newspapers, any big city, you will find daily there is some rave party, there has been some police raid, and even VIP children have been arrested. Late night parties, some farmhouse or some, yeah, every day, and VIP people, children and all are. So that means this does not show the major public health problem. It's a hidden pandemic. It's a hidden, yeah. So it's that's why once it is hidden, it's very difficult to really eliminate it. So these are the challenges, and so again, sedatives, sleeping pills, inhalants, cocaine, amphetamine like stimulants, particularly students during exam time or even for some performance. And now there are a lot of drinks also with, some type of drinks where they mix the amphetamine plus caffeine, high energy drinks. Prevalence of harmful use of sedatives. So these are some of the, yeah. And what are the determinants? It's very complex. The causes, the determinants. Epidemiology means what is the prevalence, what are the determinants uh, of this substance abuse. So multiple increasing factors influence using behavior and loss of decisional flexibility. Not all who become dependent experience it same way or motivated by same factors. They come into it from different pathways. Some due to, for say, some depression or anxiety, or, yeah, some may come by peer pressure. Some are some are lured by drug traffickers, you know, and different factors may be more or less important and different. Drug availability, easy availability. That's why the earlier the studies are there. The among professions, the doctors and nurses are most vulnerable to drug addiction because of easy availability. Social acceptance, like some alcohol, smoking is of course getting social discouragement, but it was at one time. Alcohol is socially accepted, cannabis, bhang, socially accepted. Peer pressure. There's a peer pressure. You want to be part of the group. So these are the psychological dynamics and vulnerable personality and biology. There may be some people like in alcoholism, there are certain genetic factors. Some people have got a family history, maybe by genetic or maybe by learned behavior. Then other self-medication, like you are not finding, you are not, you are finding difficulty going to sleep, you may self-medicate. So then genetic with alcohol, as I said, conditioning maintained by consequences, terminate conditioning. Sometimes conditioning is like you are addicted to, say, smoking. So if you give up smoking, you will have problems with, say, you may have constipation, you may have restlessness, and sometimes it is special status. I mean, at one time, Marlboro Man, there was a glamour, the pressure marketing. So that was a special status. And women, as I said, women want to feel equal to men. So that's a wrong, I mean, marker of feminism or assassin of feminism. By that, we can do anything which males can do. So that smoking started like this. Special cigarettes were prepared for women, camels, and other things. So now, as I said, in many urban centers, alcohol use also is increasing in women. Euphoria is feel good. So anything which hits the brain, it is addictive because you are craving for that feel good factor. Then secondary reinforcers like paraphernalia, you have a big party, rave party, and these are the things which adds to the spice or adds to the reinforcing, I mean, the whole environment, social environment. So these are the paraphernalia, the use of drugs or heroin or opioids. Of course, alcohol is always socially accepted to a certain extent, but once a person cannot do without it, then it is labeled as disorder. So now I will be just talking about the opiate crisis, which may be a major problem if we follow the global trends. So this is a major issue today because there are more than any substance, but I am just focusing on the opiate crisis. That currently 60 million people globally are under the addictive effects of opioids, and 1 lakh deaths due to overdose every year. You can imagine the burden. And as I said, these are underestimates because many times, because of stigma, it may not be revealed the cause of death. So 1 lakh deaths and 60 million are struggling with it. Most of the deaths have been attributed to fentanyl, which is coming up as a prescription drug, and analgesic, which is 30 to 100 times more potent than heroin or morphine. Due to its high toxicity, incidents of fatalities are increasing globally. So I would appeal to all doctors to be very careful with this drug fentanyl, particularly the pain clinics, then anesthesia. So this is which is and these drugs are promoted very aggressive marketing by pharma industry. According to the CDC USA, the three waves of the opioid crisis. The first wave originated in the late 1990s, marked by increased overuse deaths from prescriptions. So there's a difference between the American opioid crisis, which is driven by prescription. The second wave started in 2010, driven by overdose deaths due to heroin, which was used in cough syrup. The third wave started in 2013, urged by synthetic opioids, and is the deadliest with increasing number of deaths due to overdose. So this is a third wave started in 2013, a decade back, and it is the deadliest, increasing due to overdose. And I was just recently, I came across this book by Amitav Ghosh, The Smokes and Ashes. This is a very good research by on the opium, how it started. And Ghosh has unraveled opium's hidden roots in his book Smokes and Ashes. The Britishers, it started with a British colony, cultivated opium by exporting cheap Indian labor and transporting it to China. They were making huge profits, and in fact, their armies, colonizing armies, troops were from the revenues from opium, they were sustaining the armed forces. You can China's attempts to suppress China's the Qing dynasty tried to stop this trade, and it led to two opium wars in the 19th century. The opium trade was profitable, and by the 19th century, smoking opium became popular both in Asia and Europe. The European and, in fact, certain Americans also entered in the opium trade. The Europeans entered some big families in India as well as in America profited from the opium trade. Of course, the British Empire profited the most. It's a very fascinating book. The profits benefited some of the world's biggest corporations, several of America's most powerful families, including one American president, and institutions, and laid the foundation of contemporary globalism. So the roots started in India and China, and the roots spread all over the world, and then the roots also have developed. The branches spread all over the world. From the roots in India and China of the opiate crisis in the 19th century, the branches spread all over the world, and the branches have developed their own roots like a big banyan tree. So in the United States, after the Civil War, opium was used on war veterans who got addicted for pain relief for their wounds, and it started as a recreational use among Americans in opium dens. It was also used for cough relief and diarrhea in children. The medical use also is in 1895. Bayer introduced heroin, marketed as a strong cough suppressant. It was recommended as a safer alternative for addicts trying to wean away from morphine. So again, high pressure marketing. Then by the late 1990s, doctors began to prescribe opium for pain relief indiscriminately, misled by false assurance by drug manufacturers that they were not addictives. It was a pharma industry which started this crisis. OxyContin came to the market in 1996, and in 2019, 30 million people, or 3% of the American population, turned addicts. Opioid overdose became the leading cause of death in 2017. There were 72,000 overdose deaths. This is in America. The promotion and marketing of OxyContin was a commercial triumph, resulting in public health tragedy. This was carried out by Purdue Pharmaceuticals, and other manufacturers managed to obtain federal approvals for the opioid painkillers, influenced doctors to promote their marketing campaigns. They inducted doctors to promote this, manipulated the judiciary so that top management got away with light sentences. All these are indicators of corruption at a large scale. And why this has got relevance for India, I'll come to it. The Indian opiate crisis. The same survey showed opioid use is 2.1%. It's little less than America, 3%. But since you see the population is much higher in India and large number of youth. So in absolute numbers, it may be 3 times more than but again, as I said, it's a hidden crisis. The figures may be low too, but the country may catch up soon due to aggressive marketing by pharma. And the biggest loophole I feel is the India Stringent Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act was amended in 2014, allowing easier access to some opioids labeled as essential narcotics for treatment purposes. So, because this is a big market in India because of large population, and it now the opioid crisis is driven by prescription drugs in USA. It may also because of the change in regulation in India. We are vulnerable. Unlike the USA, as on today, it is not there. Currently, the Indian opioid epidemic is not driven by doctor prescription, but largely heroin addiction. And the heroin addiction, they are different. It can be smoked, it can be inhaled on a tin foil, or it can be taken by injection, which makes a person vulnerable to HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. And particularly hepatitis C is more common in intravenous drug users, particularly in the Northeast. Now it is catching up in Haryana and Punjab also. Mortality rate in addicts are 10 times higher. The source of pharmaceutical opioid is informal drug material without a prescription. Like we have got a very lax system. It may be obtained from the chemist. And this is the problem. And what are the treatment options? Again, it's very personalized. It requires expertise. There are different substances like tobacco is a different, yes, opioid is a different, alcohol is a different, and it may be hospitalized treatment, indoor treatment due to drug overdose. That may be due to emergency. Risk of severe withdrawal, because severe withdrawal symptoms have to be managed. Medical comorbidities, psychiatric illness with suicidal ideations. So it's a complex problem. So hospitalization may be required for different indications. Then there are certain residential treatment units, non-intensive medical psychiatric monitoring, restricted environment, partial hospitalization. Then outpatient program when there is no risk of medical psychiatric morbidity and highly motivated patients. It requires de-addiction mostly depends on the patients. Then reform addicts like Alcoholic Anonymous, they can be volunteer to wean away other addicts. I have seen this in the Northeast when I was posted in the armed forces in the Northeast during service in the armed forces. I have directly interacted with them, taken part in group discussion with them. So they are the best people who can volunteer former addicts who are reformed. Then prevention and control, there have been a lot of effort to cope with the opioid crisis in the America. The Stanford Lancet Commission was set up in 2022. The commission proposed several measures like better regulations, but in India, we have made the regulation little lax. Education on harmful effects, all that exists. Safe disposal restriction on prescription of opioids. This has to be controlled drugs, creating an enabling environment to reduce opioid addiction. And our environment is becoming more and more stressful. You see, from a young age, from school age, there is stress of children, there is stress of job, there is unemployment. So all these are going against, these are increasing the challenge. They are youth suicide, they are UTA, so they resort to drugs first. So feel quite, I feel very really hopeless to see how we can create a better stress-free and enabling environment. So these are all guidelines are all right, but the environment requires serious participation by all people, not doctors only, but by the society as a large. Then similar recommendations have been made in the Indian context, have been made, but there are many forces which are acting against it. There are a lot of illicit activities, there are border areas, there are drug addicts, there are terrorists, there are arms deal, all linked with the promoting youth, getting youth hooked on drug addiction and other things, which improves their revenues. What the Britishers did 18th, 19th century, present day mercenaries are doing the similar thing. So that is the conclusion is not very optimistic. It's doubtful whether measures will be able to cope with the present day opioid crisis. Colonial roots originating in the Orient are deep, with the branches enveloping the globe over the years. The branches have grown roots like a giant banyan tree in distant lands covering the globe. Atlas may shrug with all its might, but it may be difficult to unearth the roots, which has got a strong grip. While substance abuse includes many agents besides opioids, the greatest challenge is posed by opioids. There are many here, but the opioid can be taken as a prototype. Various conflicts of interest push substance use disorders. A lot of big uh, forces are there. Most of them illegal, narcotics, smuggling, trade, arms, terrorism. So these are some of the references I have given. The first reference is a paper from Indian Journal of Psychiatry. This is 2023, Understanding the Epidemiology of Substance Abuse in India. So those who are interested can see the figures in detail. Then second reference is the Ministry of Social Justice. As I said, the latest countrywide survey. Then the third is an editorial from Lancet, opioid crisis. And fourth is fentanyl. Fentanyl, how in 2024 and its derivatives, because now these things will be easily available in India under prescription because of the change in regulation. And this is the ghost book, as I said, Smokes and Acids. This is a very interesting read, well researched, with very good references. And there are other references on similar lines, opium wars, marketing of OxyContin, commercial Trump, public health tragedy. That is how OxyContin was promoted by Purdue Pharmaceuticals in USA. And then there is a reference number 8 is also very interesting. Is there an opioid epidemic in India? Journal of Public Health, 2021. Because as I said, we are also adapting the culture, American culture, particularly the urban youth. In North America, then Indian studies. So that's all I think. I have finished.